So first of all, thank you for joining me. This is just like, it's gonna stay quite informal if you guys are all right with that. I just wanted to do this masterclass on kind of finding our voices as writers, because I think it's something that is, it's one of those things that you hear about all the time, like producers and directors and schemes and the BBC and the writers' room and New Writing North, they all say like, we are screaming out for original voices, we are screaming out for authentic voices, we want your voice to be heard, you have to like have your unique voice, but like no one ever talks about what that actually means. And I always think that, especially for writers, if you've been kind of going at it for a while and you've been like at any stage in your career, I think it can feel really daunting to be like, well, what does that mean? Like, you're looking for voices. What's wrong with the work I've done already? Like, what, like, is there something that I've not done yet or I'm not doing yet that you expect of me before you're going to kind of consider me on that level? Or like, is there something, I always find it really frustrating when you are given that advice that doesn't feel clear and doesn't feel actionable. And like, definitely I think in hindsight, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make my voice more acceptable, or like trying to mimic what other people were doing in writing, because I thought that they knew what they were doing and I didn't. And I just think that it can be chaotic and difficult and overwhelming. So I thought it would be really useful for us to kind of have a chat about it. And to that end, again, you guys don't feel obliged to respond to this if it is daunting, but I kind of was wondering where people in this group kind of like, what drew you to wanting to do the masterclass? Like, where do you feel in relationship to that? Do you feel like you've got an idea of what you think your voice is or what you want it to be, but other people aren't picking up on it? Or do you just feel like it's this buzzword that you don't understand? Or like, if people are comfortable, it would be lovely to kind of, especially because we're quite a nice little small group, just the 5 of us, would people be happy to kind of go through and kind of say who you are, what kind of writing you do or you want to do, and like what drew you to wanting to do the masterclass? Is that okay? I see Cheska nodding, which is why I'm going to ask if you'll go first.
Hello. There's 2 reasons I'm here. Is it Conrad?
Conway.
Conway, sorry.
Okay.
So I'm the artistic director of a theatre company in Leeds, and we work a lot with disadvantaged people, including prisoners and people with convictions. And I've just commissioned a person with a conviction to kind of co-write with me. So I'm here. He's not bloody here, but I'm here to kind of for him to do the session. Obviously, sometimes their lives are quite chaotic. So I can break stuff down with him afterwards and support him with the mentoring I'm giving him. And also I've been writing for 10, 11, 12 years. I write predominantly for stage. I've done bits for screen, and I just think it's always like, you never like go, oh, I've learned everything, I'm done. And just with COVID and personal things that have happened, I kind of lost a lot of confidence, just as an artist in general. So yes, I'm here for Ray in one sense as his mentor, but I'm also here as a writer, and finding your voice, that kind of appealed to me, just because it's something you're always finding and it changes, it's so fluid. And I don't know if some of my work's changed, of what I want to do or what I have done. So does that kind of answer everything, Conway?
I think that absolutely answers it. And like, I think, as I say, I'm glad that we're recording this now. So hopefully Ray, if he's not able to join us, we'll get a chance to watch later.
Yes, definitely.
but like also, and I think it's also because you and him are, it sounds like co-writing, that sounds really exciting, but like that's a peer relationship as well as a mentoring relationship. So I think it's important as well that you be here for yourself, as someone who's doing that process with him, and not like, you're not like lecturing him or anything. And also when you talk about kind of not like knocks to your confidence over COVID, like we're gonna, like, I think fear and imposter syndrome and the way that like our ability to kind of believe in ourselves, I know this sounds corny, but I think that is so much a part of like having the courage to like speak in a way that feels authentic and truthful to us. And it's really hard, and we're definitely going to talk about that tonight.
Cool.
So someone else, Lindsay, Ben, Louisa, anyone, put your hands up if you want to go next. Louisa?
Yeah, I think voice, it's something that's a bit difficult to pin down. Sorry, I haven't introduced myself first. I write mainly prose, short stories, working on a novel, and I've recently got interested in drama generally. I'm doing an audio drama writing course, and I've also got, there's a novella that I've worked quite a lot of that feels like it should be a play. So I'm venturing out really into different areas and wondering whether my writing's in the right format. I think with voice, sometimes I feel like I've written something and I think, oh, my voice is really there and it's really strong. And then in other bits of writing, perhaps not so much, or my voice comes out through a character really strongly. So it kind of happens in different ways, but I think it's something that's quite hard to pin down. I'd really like to be able to say, how can I make sure my voice is clear in this, and kind of what am I saying? Just pin it down a little bit more would be really good. I find that difficult.
I mean, it's interesting because it's, especially if you're writing like, because I think I know what you mean, where I know that there are moments in everything that I've written where usually for most of it I've tried to kind of almost hide myself or bury it underneath story, and then there'll be this moment where we peek out and we're just like, actually, here's just what I fucking have to say. Like, this is just like, this is the moment that like I kind of open the curtains and like I show the thing that I want you to see, and then we close the curtains again. And I think there's something, oh, we've got someone else in the waiting room, but I'll let them through. Hiya, Sarah. We are just going through saying hello to everyone and kind of touching in on why people are interested in being here. But sorry, to come back to what we were saying, Louisa, I think there's something about like voice, and I don't know if this is right. It's all just kind of, we're all just trying to make sense of it. But voice being not like these specific moments where we show our face, but like voice is like the whole landscape that we create, and there is some presence of us in there, in the like whole construction of it. So it's, I know what you mean very much about like the desire to kind of be able to nail it down. It probably depends on what you're writing, how possible that is, but it's an interesting ambition. Shall we hear from someone else? Can we hear from Lindsay? Will you share with us?
Right, back on there. So I feel like a bit of a novice compared to what I've heard so far, but I actually fell into writing kind of accidentally through social media role play, which probably sounds really weird.
Lindsay,
No.
I've got to stop you because sorry, I wish this wasn't being recorded now, but I just don't want you to feel weird. I've been role-playing on forums since I was 15, and that's where some of the best writers I have ever met are.
I can't believe the quality of some of the writing there. I'm being fortunate to write with and read people who are better than books that I've read. And sometimes it feels like, because most people are there as a hobby, most people are there doing other things, they've got full-time jobs, they go on social media, they write a few replies, they have some characters and they go away and get on with their life. And I'm like, these people should be making a living from this. There's some real talent out there. But I'm not saying that's me. But I'm saying I kind of fell into it that way through social media. Someone approached me, we started writing a story, and this thing just kind of grew from there with these characters that I've kind of created. And the beauty of it as well is that you collaborate and you're working with somebody else, and it's not all your own story. So there's an element of like improvising, really reacting to what they're saying and doing. And I've just really, really enjoyed like the whole process of doing it. And I feel like I want to know more, I want to get better. I've learned so much, but because I'd not done it before, I knew nothing about writing. I kind of feel like I want to know about, I've picked up a lot from lots of different people and their styles. So I want to know, you know, I don't want to be copying or imitating anybody. I want to find my own style in that. But I just feel like I've got these characters developing in my mind and these whole worlds, and then there's backstories and things shooting off all over the place, and it's like there's so much more that I can do with this. But that's it. It's just a little hobby for me, but it's something that I've grown to really, really love and would like to do more with.
Well, I mean, so obviously I am biased because completely like, obviously I did years of that, like absolutely years of that before I got anything professional on stage or written or shown, before I got paid for anything. Like one of the things that they say about writing is like you become a great writer by writing every single day. And you can make yourself do that if you find a type of writing that is just fun and that is joyful and that you want to do every single day. And have you thought about, or do you know what kind of medium you are interested in writing in? Do you want to write novels? Do you want to write scripts?
That's the thing. At this moment in time, I just feel like I've got these characters and worlds, and I feel like I need to do more with them, but I'm not really sure where to go. I really love like film and TV, and I was like heavily influenced by that as well. So, you know, probably more in that direction, I would have thought, but I'm not sure. I'm just taking it, you know, one day at a time, and I'm just something I really enjoy doing and want to progress with.
That's really exciting, and in a lot of ways that's a lovely position to be in, because the whole world is like, whole world is open to you. And also we're gonna, again, as we go on, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of influences and inspirations and the work of other people that we love, and like how kind of not to worry about copying, to be honest, like because no one's gonna, like, no one, like everyone has their own stories that they want to tell, and following that passion and finding kind of your new stories that are like inspired and driven and homages, like that's going to be part of your voice, like so kind of don't worry too much about that for the minute. And I'm quickly going to answer Sarah Tang, who has messaged me to just double check that there is going to be a recording of this later, and I just want to say yes, and I'll quickly type it to her in case she's missed any of this. So apologies for this very exciting bit of the masterclass where I just type, "Hi Sarah, don't worry, there'll be a..."
Sorry, can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, hello.
Okay. Oh, yeah, all right. So, no, I'm just really sorry I'm keeping my camera off because I've got to jump in and out of the meeting, trying to juggle two things at a time. But I was just wondering if we can access this later.
Yes, don't worry, Sarah. It'll be on Box of Tricks. We'll share it through.
Thank you so much.
There's an archive.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll try to stay in as much as I can. Thank you.
Okay, don't worry too much. We'll still be here. Okay, Ben, do you want to do you mind sharing kind of your background and what you're looking for yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Ben. My pronouns are he, him. They should be on the screen. Currently rocking a Britney microphone because I've been working today. So I come very, very fresh and new to writing because I've been an actor for a long time. And this is kind of part of my way of exploring creativity in other means when you can't get work. And I've become really interested in being able to not just take other people's stories and tell them, but also to tell my own. I think that what drew me to this in particular as well was the fact that because I'm so new to it, I don't really know. I know who I am as an actor, but I don't know who I am as a writer. So, and I know that just comes from practice, but I also feel like it is one of those things that gets thrown around, and it's like, well, you have to have your own voice. You can't be anyone else. You have to be yourself. And I know I am, because I can't be anyone else. But at the same time, I guess I'm worried that everything I'm putting down is very vague and generic and is not specific. And when you're an actor, being specific is so important. And I think it's the same when you're a writer. And I feel like I'm being specific, but I also don't know how to prove that that I am. And I think that also I worry about giving all characters the same voice, because I work mainly in theatre, so I'm writing mainly for stage at the moment. And again, like working as an actor, I know that different actors bring different voices to characters, but I also know that a lot of that work is done through the writing and picking. As an actor, you're picking things out and going, right, that's an interesting choice of words there, so that informs my decisions. And when you're in a rehearsal room, everything comes to life. So I suppose it's having enough confidence in myself to know that that life is there. Does that make sense?
I think so. And a lot of it, for what it's worth, a lot of what you've said about kind of worrying that every character has the same voice. I was in a really good masterclass, better than this one, so I hope you enjoy this one anyway. But I was in a masterclass earlier this year with Russell T Davies, and he said every single character he writes, to him, just sounds like him. And I thought, what an incredible thing to hear from that man of all people. Because and for what it's worth, in my experience, I'm exactly the same. I write a script and then I go back through and I'm deliberately like, okay, because every single character in this script right now is Conway, so I want to go through and I want to say, actually, no, I want to make a deliberate decision that this person actually talks really fast. That's just Conway. This person talks really slow, which differentiates them from me. And this person like uses big words because he wants you to think that he's intelligent. And like, and I know that everyone knows this, but writing is rewriting, and like, and a lot of those things, I think, are really, a lot of what you said is like resonates with me a lot as a writer. And I guess also I didn't do this part of the, like, I made you all introduce yourself and I didn't introduce myself. So I've been writing for about 10 years. I got my first commission from the Theatre Royal Stratford East in 2012. In the last kind of 3 years, I've been writing for television. So I'm a writer on EastEnders. I'm developing new work with Screen Yorkshire, and I'm also developing theatre work with Stratford East. And in between, I've always been someone who just takes jobs on anything. Anyone who'll pay me 300 quid to write something, I'll have the job, because everything is practice. So like, and the fight against imposter syndrome is still real, and the feeling that you're not saying anything new and the fear that you don't have anything to say is still real. And whenever I get a chance to talk to more experienced writers who've been doing it for 20 years and who've been doing it for 30 years and who've actually gotten original shows into productions, I always ask, how do you deal with the imposter syndrome? How do you deal with like how neurotic it makes you feel? How do you deal with feeling like you're not doing enough? And no one, like, we just have to keep going into the dark, because so one comforting thing, even from that very bleak outlook, one comforting thing is that, like, that feeling is not it's not true just because you're the one having it, because like people who've been writing on soaps for 30 years still have it. People who you would think, when I'm at that position in my career, that's when I'll feel confident, that's when I'll feel certain that my voice is enough and that my work is enough. Like, they still have it. So we're all fighting the same demon in that sense. But okay, so that's Sarah, I realize that you are in and out of work. If you're available and if you'd like to kind of give us an idea of what you're about as a writer and kind of what you were hoping to get from this masterclass, then you can do, but also no pressure, you don't have to, because I realize you are working. Okay, we'll leave Sarah for the minute, and if she wishes to chime in, she can. So what do I think voice is? This is after having that lovely conversation, and I'm probably going to repeat myself a bit because I think I said it a few times in response to you. So like, the annoying thing about your voice as a writer is that it is something alchemical. It's not an easy thing. It's not just the way that you talk. It's not just the way that you write your dialogue. It is like, it's a combination of like the things that have inspired you, the things that you are kind of trying to say, the lens that is your experiences of something, the way that you look at something that comes from like 30 years growing up in Liverpool, or 10 years in Manchester, or 15 years in London, like your experiences as a man or as a woman or as a non-binary person, as a trans person in my case. Like, all of these contribute to that je ne sais quoi, that extremely annoying to nail down thing, but it is also the thing that no one else can do. Like, and again, Ben, you kind of mentioned the fear or the feeling that like that you're not being specific in your writing, and I think one of the things that people hear about writing is you get told that you can only write what you know, and they think that means that you have to write just the day-to-day realities of your normal life, when it's like, actually, what you know is emotional truths. And again, I'm sure, Ben, you will know this as an actor. If we have other actors in the room, I'm sure they'll know it. Like, you can know about grief without having like actually lived in Shakespeare's day and had this, like, you can know about grief without being Hamlet. Like, you can know the kind of the emotional truth of something without needing it to be something that you've personally gone through. Like, so I think, like, when we talk about being specific and being able to write what we know or speak in a way that's truthful, that doesn't mean that you have to write about, you know, being a trans Scouser who spent 10 years working on a musical. Like, it can be, and this is something for me, I'm a huge genre fiction nerd. I love sci-fi, I love fantasy. Like, and for me, part of my voice is trying to bring a new lens or a new perspective to those genres and trying to tell those stories from angles that haven't been seen before. And I guess also from my perspective, I'm able to kind of use like, and this is, I'm just going to say what it is. I'm able to be like, I have a trans perspective. I'm like a trans Scouser. I am not from the usual background of the people who got paid to tell these stories. Like, I absolutely use that to like, to sell my version of these stories. But like, I also use, I've got a, like, one of the plays that I have in production at the minute, not in production, in development, is based on being a teenage goth who, a bit of my personal history. When I was a teenager, me and my friends used to get really drunk, and we would leave the council estate where we were partying and go onto this big, like, kind of former tip near where we were. And we would like go and just pretend to be like vampires and stuff. And that's unbelievably specific. And it hasn't, like, to me, I can see connections with that kind of fantasism and like trans identity. And like, I'm able to bring all of that to like, then a kind of grounded teenage sci-fi genre story. But like the bit of that you don't need to be trans for, you don't need to be like, you don't need to be me for, is like that weird specific story about me and my teenage friends going out and doing this stupid thing. Like, and that's the kind of specificity that like everyone has about something in their life. And everyone actually, you will have millions of these little tiny stories that you can refract into different stories, and that you can find the kind of you can find like the building blocks of what you want to talk about in. Sorry, that was a little bit of a ramble, but I hope it made sense. And do like shout out if anything I say doesn't. But I think about things like, and I think bringing like your realness, whether that's teenage frolics or whether that's like personal grief and personal losses, or absurdity and humor, and like all these very, very real, very specific experiences we can bring to stories that have never had those specific experiences on them before. Which brings us to the part of it that we need in order to do that is kind of fearlessness. Like, and the hardest part of it is fearlessness. Because if we are saying, I'm going to take this story that's usually done like this, and that I've seen everyone else, everyone who's gotten this produced before, and everyone who's published this before, and everyone who's written it before has done it like this, it's so easy for us to think, so that must be the right way to do it. But no one wants, when I try and do it like this, it doesn't work. Or when I try and do it like this, no one wants to buy it, no one wants to put it on, no one wants to publish it. And it's really hard to tell yourself that you're not doing it wrong somehow. Or like, it's hard to stop yourself from trying to do this when actually that's not your version of this story. And that's not the version of this story that you really care about. That's just the one you're trying to do because you think it's what you're supposed to do. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, I'm seeing nods. So the notes that I've made on here, that hopefully I'm just going to read them out in the hope that when I was preparing for this, I got something useful down. I said you have to chase things that you don't like. You have to think about what you want to say, and think about the things that you think no one else is interested in. Things that you are worried kind of don't belong on stage. Like the bits of stories that you think you're only telling for yourself, and that you're like, well, I really love this, but it's not real, it's not proper. Like, again, Lindsay, I'm thinking about I'm thinking about kind of that forum role play and the number of people who I've tried to drag into collaborating with me in theatre, and the number of people I've tried to drag into working with me, but who don't, who maybe don't see the writing that they're doing as like real or like authoritative or like on that level. And I've written down here that there's a delicate balance between kind of being willing to edit your work and willing to rewrite your work, and being kind of receptive to criticism, and like also, and like, so that's like the good side. And then the bad side is like too much self-doubt and too much second guessing yourself. Like, yes, Jessica?
Sorry, could you just, were you saying the things, think about the things that you think no one else is interested in, that thing that you were passionate about or whatever. Are you saying to write about those things?
If you think like, if it's some, so one thing that we're going to get onto soon, but I'll skip ahead to say it, like, so 3 questions that people kind of ask, or 3 questions that kind of, this is the businessy side, but 3 questions that like commissioners will ask about new projects is, why this, why now, and why you? So they'll say, why is this a story that should be told or a subject that should be talked about? Why is this the right time for it to see the light of day? And why are you the right person to tell that story? So what I would say is, if there is something that you really care about and that you're really interested in, and a story that you think deserves telling, but in your head you think, oh, no one else is going to be interested in that, I would say, think about why you care about it. Because actually, if you care about it, that's a good sign that other people will too. And the voice saying no one else is interested in this is probably wrong.
I think I just have, as a producer, as well as writer and performer, I go from what I want to say first, but then with that business head, I'm like, this isn't current. This has just been done 10 times at the Royal Court. This is like, who wants to hear me talk about all the different types of tea? Do you know, for example, if I'm really interested in it, then there'll be millions of other people who are. So it's, instead of trying to go, oh, that's been done, that's not interesting, or that's boring, actually, it's a good tip. I'm just figuring it out in my head.
Absolutely that. And like, also the, like, if it's something that you are obsessed with, like, and you've kind of gone deep into it, like, you find the network of things that actually, like, I mean, there's like, as an example, one of the other writers with Box of Tricks, Billy Collins, is like, they've got a play coming up called Too Much World All at Once. I believe it's coming out in March. But part of the research for that was into like this Antarctic tern watching station, like watching birds in the Antarctic, which I think it would be really easy for someone to be like, well, I'm really interested in this sort of specific niche thing, but for all these other reasons, they're not, like, it's a very niche thing. It's probably just something I care about, and there's this other thing has been done, and this other thing has been done, and this other thing has been done. But actually, when you go deep and you explore, and you also kind of have to go deep into yourself and think about why you care about this so much, and why this is like what is the root of why this matters so much to you, and when you follow that thread, you will find something important, even if that important thing is just joy. Like, if you wanted to write about 56 different types of tea and you were like, well, why do I care about this? Maybe you'd find that it's about the colonial roots of trade, which is very important. Or maybe you just find that it's about like having a cup of tea with someone you love and actually human connection. But if you care about it, if it's important to you, you'd find that you follow that and you'll find the reason why it's important. But you kind of it's hard.
It's really interesting. Yeah, it makes sense a lot for a lot of the work I do. There's much bigger societal issues or themes or and instead of just going, oh, I really love my dog and like he's like my best friend, actually that could be about relationships and trauma and not having a family growing up and like all this other stuff that actually it's not about my dog. It's not, because otherwise I then think it's too specific and it's too egotistical in a way, and I'm like, why does anyone want to watch a play about me and my dog? This is obviously hypothetical, but it's actually about the bigger threads that everybody else can relate to. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think like don't get me wrong, I think there are a lot of plays that are just like, I really love my dog and this is about that. And some of those plays won't be the most exciting thing in the world. Like, so I guess I would say part of finding that voice is about like doing that internal work of finding why it matters.
Yeah. Cool.
And why. Oh, sorry.
No, she's saying thank you.
No, my pleasure. So relevant to this, also, if anyone else has a question or a thought or a comment, do just shout out. But otherwise, I'll just keep chundering on through my notes. Yes, Lindsay?
Put my mic back on. Yeah, I think also I've it's been like a kind of therapy for me as the writing as well. Not that I'm putting all my personal issues out onto social media, but the same sort of thing when you're saying like following a thread. I'd start something and it's like a dog with a bone, then I can't let go of it and it goes deeper and deeper. And I found that a lot of the things that I've written, they do get quite dark and I sort of balance it out with humour. So my characters also, when you said also before about the vampire, I was chuckling to myself because there's a vampire involved in my story, but it's not my character, it's somebody else. But this random partnership came up and it shouldn't have worked, but we worked together. And sometimes it just goes into ridiculousness. But because of the nature of the characters, I feel that it really works. But I've been able to explore some themes that I didn't realise until I went really deep. They're like, oh yeah, I'd like to go further with that. And it has been, I've done a lot of like internal work on myself by doing this writing as well. But sometimes it gets a bit dark and like, okay, now this is probably not that entertaining and I just need to, but the character herself is very kind of like that and up and down and a bit wacky. So I feel like it gets away with it. But I think one of the things that I tend to do a lot is inject a bit of humour into something to feel like, okay, let's not all get like really too serious. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that because it has kind of been a bit of a therapy as well, like following the thread.
I think I mean also like there is nothing makes for good tragedy than like pairing it with humor, does it? Like if something's tragedy, heavy darkness all the way through, then eventually you're just like, oh, what's the next thing that's going to happen? But if you have that like levity and humor and warmth and those moments of light, it just makes the dark hit harder. I love it. Okay, so again, at the risk of repeating myself a little bit, because I do love to just go off the cusp and ramble, it turns out, I thought we'd talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, because as I mentioned, I think this is like the vampire of voice. Like this is the thing that makes you silence yourself and that makes you tell yourself that you're not good enough and that you have to censor yourself and that your voice isn't that the story you want to tell isn't important, or that it isn't specific enough, or it isn't enough. So like I just kind of I just kind of, I popped down a few little notes and a few little suggestions for dealing with it, because we are all writers, we're all creators, we are all going to be dealing with it for the rest of our 30-year careers, as I've been told. And a few of these are just like things that I would ask you to practice in your daily lives if you can. And the number one is just like, stop apologizing when you're showing people things, or when you're sharing your work, or when you're talking about your work. It is the easiest and most natural thing in the world to be like, oh, I'm working on this play, I'm really sorry, but I'd really appreciate it if you took a look at it. Or, oh, could you read this for me? I'm sorry, it's really long. Or like, even someone goes, oh, I'd love to read your work, and you go, oh, I love that. Oh, sorry, this draft's a bit rough. It's hard. Make yourself take the word out of your vocabulary, because like, you can be polite without it. You're being polite without it. You can, like, I again, and I know it's just like a small thing, I say thank you a lot, instead of saying sorry a lot. I say lots of thank you, that's really kind of you. Thank you, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, I did, because it just does that tiny little switch from telling myself that I've done something wrong versus telling the other person that I appreciate them and I'm grateful. And maybe that's fixing my imposter syndrome, and maybe it isn't, but it's what I try and do, and so I push it onto you guys as well. Another one that I would ask you to try and do is, it's so easy to be like, whatever you've done, whatever you've written, whatever you've accomplished, it's so easy to look at the people who are around you and think, oh, but they've done more than me, oh, but they are doing better than me, or they are doing like the next thing, they've had this commission, they've had that. And it's really easy to, again, that just feeds that imposter, and it feeds the belief that because someone else has done that, that invalidates whatever you've achieved. And because someone else has gotten this award, or is at some different point in their career, like, that means that you're like running out of time, or you're losing, or you've failed, or you've wasted time, or like, and I can say all of the thoughts because I have all the thoughts. And we, like, what I try and do, can't always do it, but what I try and do is I ask myself, 5 years ago, did I think I would achieve what I've achieved now? 5 years ago, did I think I would have written my first short story? 5 years ago, did I think that I would be considering turning this hobby into a vocation? 5 years ago, did I think I would be working on my first play? Like, and instead of looking around at what everyone else has done, I try and ask myself, like, how would my past self feel about what I've achieved? Because because my past self thought I never thought I was going to make any money as a writer, ever. Like, I thought that I was going to have a different job forever, and that this was going to be my passion, and I was going to do it because I loved it. And that was the most I ever expected to get out of writing as a thing that was in my life. And 5 or 6 years ago, or like whenever, before I was able to do it for a living, I felt like there were times where I felt like I had completely wasted my life and like I had completely like gone all in on this thing that just was impossible, like that I wasn't good enough at to actually achieve anything in. And all the people I knew around me were doing different things with their lives, and I thought at the time better things with their lives. And in my head I was just just the worst. I just felt awful about it. But even at that time, when I kind of pulled myself together and looked back and thought, did you expect to get this far? The answer was no. I had like, and actually, if I'd told my earlier self all of the things that I would have achieved at that point, and that I was moaning about it, my earlier self would have called you a liar. Like, I would have been furious with myself. But like, it's a practice to do that and to try and do that. And I'm gonna really urge all of you to try and do it, because it's hard, but it's, again, one of my little tools against imposter syndrome. And another one, which, again, maybe some of you already have this a little bit, maybe some of you are going to need this in the future, like, practice bigging yourself up and practice telling your story as a writer. Like, practice writing about, in addition to making your work, like, and I realize that for those of you who are kind of just at that step where you're just starting to write for an audience and not just for yourself, like, I know this is going to sound very premature, so actually don't worry about it yet unless you want to, but think about what you're going to write in the author's bio when you send your first short story to a magazine, or when you send your first short play to a competition, and think about what you're going to say. Like, think about the story of why your voice is important. And again, that's excruciating. Like, I know it's excruciating because now I have to do it all the time, but it's actually, if you force yourself to occasionally take a bit of time to sit down and say, okay, actually, what's my experience as a writer and my experience in my life that makes me the best person to tell this story that I'm telling? Like, take your time and write it out. And again, don't let yourself put, oh, I know that I'm only beginning, but I'm sorry that I'm sending this, but it's only a first go, but cut all of that and just write the version that is. Actually, like, I've been writing as part of a community online for 10 years. I've been developing my own work as an actor for years, and I've always interrogated texts. Like, or like, in my case, like, I've wanted to tell this story since I was a drunk teenager running around in the woods. Like, tell the cockiest, funniest, brassiest version of that story, and just like put it down on paper, and you won't believe it forever. And that cocky, brassy version doesn't have to be the version that you show to anyone. It doesn't have to be the version that you actually send in when you apply for something, but actually investing the time in doing that, even if it's just for yourself, is like important, and it's really useful. And when you get to that point where you are ready to send it somewhere, or to apply for something, or to like the practice you'll thank yourself for having practiced. Because, and this is kind of my I mean, it's going to be a long section, but this is kind of my last section, is the part of like finding your voice that is kind of about being able, like, it's kind of about selling yourself, and it's kind of about telling the industry and the gatekeepers and the commissioners, telling them why your voice is important, and why, like those 3 questions from earlier, why this, why now, why you? Like, because especially in the last few years, there is kind of a push for, I mean, there's always like a push for fresh voices and new voices, because like, while there's some difficult stuff going on in like kind of arts funding in this country. I'm not going to pretend there isn't. But with the internet and with streaming and with platforms like with the kind of current age that we live in, like Kindle publishing, all of that, actually podcasts, sorry, I'm just going to keep saying like Instagram, mobile phones, like actually with the number of platforms there are now for storytelling, there actually is a huge amount of space for stories and a huge amount of space where people want to hear stories they've never heard before and voices they've never heard before. So like, and if you are a voice that hasn't been heard before, which you are, because no one else can do your voice, like no one else is able to tell your unique story, whatever it is, like actually sometimes you need to say, like, you need to know how to say, this is something different and this is why you want it. Like I've written down, you have to be able to tell them that you can show them something they've never seen before. And that's really hard because we all have imposter syndrome. But a big part of it is figuring out what your story is as a writer, whatever that is, whether it's about the transness, whether it's about your background as a theatre producer who works with people from diverse backgrounds and telling stories, whether like whatever that is, you kind of you like at a certain point it will be useful for you to be able to kind of be a bit self-serving and yeah, really like say like these are the reasons why me, these are the reasons why me, these are the reasons why now, and these are the reasons why this is the story. Let's see, what else have we got? Yeah, so one of the things that, again, you guys, you might not thank me for this. I had like a few different, I had a few different kind of ideas for like little activities we could do, little workshops, depending on kind of, I was going to kind of try and choose one depending on where we were as a group, or what we were interested in as a group. One of them was about kind of completely like fighting the urge to censor ourselves and like absolutely banging out every single thing we want to talk about, all of the things that we really care about, and just making a massive list on our own if we can be bothered. I was going to suggest we kind of take 5 minutes to do that, or like I was going to suggest if we have like a story in mind that we want to tell, we all kind of step away and do 5 minutes of practicing the why this, why now, why you. Or I was going to suggest that we kind of step away for a few minutes and have a go at writing down like our story so far, like our little story of us as a writer so far. Just, you don't have to show it to the group, but like just while we're kind of talking about it and while we've got the juices flowing, like just having 5 minutes to kind of hammer it and put something down. Do people have do you want to try that? Do you want to do 5 minutes of that? Yeah. Okay, well, so pick whichever of them feels most useful to each of you, or you can have a little rest, because Louisa, I realize that you are maybe a bit poorly and in bed, so you might just want to vibe, but you might want to take 5 minutes. And yeah, we'll go with either think about a piece of work that you're working on right now and think about, why is this the story that needs to be told now? And why are you the person who needs to tell it? Or think about who you are as a writer and what your story is and what no one else can fucking talk about other than you. Also, I'm so sorry about the constant swearing. I'm not, you know, I'm not a radio personality. Or if you kind of, or if it's just about ripping out that barrier and really go as deep as you can into thinking about, what do I want to say? What do I want to talk about if no one could stop me? So just pick whichever of them you fancy. You can do more than one if you want. I'll just sit here and vibe. But yeah, we'll come back at like kind of 1937-ish. Okay. So again, I'm gonna put you all on the spot. Did that feel useful? You don't have to share what you've written if you don't want to. You can if you like, but you don't have to. But it would be lovely to know if that felt kind of useful, if it felt like it was unlocking something, or yeah, it would be lovely to kind of know if anyone had any feedback on the activity.
I can start off if that's I won't share exactly what I wrote, but I kind of dipped in between two of them, which were writing about why this, why now, why you, but then that then allowed me to start writing the idea of, I basically just kind of wrote myself a manifesto of like why I'm allowed to do it. And I think that's been really useful because you've allowed me to see why my voice might be unique, even if I can't hear it, you know, and so I was basically just writing a list of statements about myself that give myself permission to tell this particular story, and there are reasons why. And then the very, very, very final one that I came to was like, well, no one can tell this story the way that I want to, apart from me, so I have to. So like, if I want this, then I'm going to have to be the one that does it, basically. So thank you for helping me allow myself.
No, I'm really like, I'm really glad. And I mean, I like this, like, at the risk of going a bit big and strange, like, we are like, you know, time is hurtling forward and the universe is enormous, and and there is only one of you, like, and in a vast cosmos, we are all tiny and specific, and it is completely true that that your voice and your life and what you have to say, like, there is only one of it, and it's not in an ominous way, but we're only here for that. So like, grab it and do it. And like, I'm like, good that you were able to give yourself permission and like make the thing you want, because we've not got much time. Sorry, this is, the longer we get into it, the stranger I get. The truth comes out, which is that I'm just like, yeah, the cosmos. Sorry. Would anyone else like to share? It's okay if ever. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't really want to read out what I've put, because I kind of just rambled it out, and I didn't really answer one of the questions, because in the same thing, once it starts coming out, it kind of probably sort of traversed across all of them really, but it did sort of kind of pinpoint, like you said, who I am and why I feel the need to tell the stories that I do. There was a lot of, like I said before, going into myself and finding a lot of things out, and it's been a really useful tool for that. But just I just love learning anyway, so it's just, I just find that the more I do something, the more passionate I get about it, the more I want to know. But I do have like severe imposter. I mean, I apologised as soon as I came on and said, well, I'm a bit of a novice, sorry, I don't really know what I'm doing. But I do feel that a lot. But it's kind of good to know that, not good that everyone's feeling a bit insecure, but the kind of that other people feel that too. It's not just me, because there's a lot of things obviously in the writing and things that I do that explore a lot of issues and things. So it's comforting, I would say, to know that other people experience that as well. But I think I probably went a bit deep, so I watched it. But yeah, it was useful and like sort of honing in on some points. So yeah, thank you for that.
I'm really pleased. And again, like the thing about like imposter syndrome and talking ourselves out of our own value, and like unfortunately, kind of by its nature, writing can be very, very isolating, and you are left with the inside of your own head a lot. And we just can't always trust it. Louisa, were you ready to share as well?
Yes, it was really quite affirming. I think I've got a bit of a version of the imposter syndrome where I feel like, yeah, I'm okay, I'm competent at this. I can come out with something that I'm pretty pleased with. I think the standard of it's okay, even good. And then I start getting doubts about who I'm hearing in the story. Is that just me talking? Is it the character? And whether it's the right story to be telling. I think those questions have been really helpful for me. I'll share a little bit about it. I've written a story, a novella about an 88-year-old woman. It's set in the pandemic. It's about ageism and isolation and disempowerment. And I've kind of used the situation of the pandemic to hone in on that and make it even stronger. But also other people are in the same situation, so kind of use it as a leveler as well. But then I've had doubts of, is it the right time to be starting to tell stories about the pandemic? Yes, I was writing it in that time and it was a good thing to write at that time, but is it still a good story? Is it in the right setting? So why was the story then, and why is it a good story to tell now? But it's by thinking about those other things, like how it links to the why this story and the kind of purpose behind the story and the things it wants to highlight. Yeah, this is what I do. I go around in circles.
No, I think that's really interesting, and like I think as well, again, so this isn't really, this neither validates nor invalidates your kind of inner feelings about it and your own relationship with it, but I will say from the outside world, like I know that when, like, right after the pandemic, there was definitely not like an appetite for stories about the pandemic and isolation, and like in the second we got out, no one wanted to think about it, I think, in terms of audiences. But like actually what I believe very strongly about those stories is that we as a kind of, as like on a national level, we've got a lot of trauma from that time, and lots of people have unique, well, not lots of people have their unique experiences, which they will see reflected in art that talks about it, and like and I think that while right out of the pandemic, I know there was a like, we don't want to think about that, we want happy things, we want light relief, we want a break, we need a break. I know that was like the first reaction, but I personally believe that in the years to come, we've got a lot to process from that, and we've all got, everyone got a new glimpse of like like not only individual people's like loneliness and isolation, but knowing what that meant for other people. And I think that that is, and also in some ways, not to get on the R box, but there are people who still need to be held accountable for there are people who still need to be held accountable for some of the causes of why that was so long and is so long. And there are obviously a huge number of people in this country and around the world who vulnerability and long COVID means that actually we can be like, oh, well, I mean, I say we, like there is a political reason to keep telling those stories, basically. And I'm sure you know this because you're telling that story. But like, I think that actually keeping the fire on it and keeping those stories in the narrative and not letting us forget and not letting people forget the people who are still impacted by it and not letting people forget the things that were lost and the pain that people went through. Like, I think that actually I would say even the more time passes, the more important it's going to be to have those stories being told, in my opinion. But obviously that like that doesn't change your own internal relationship with your feeling of validity in telling them, but that's just me as the outside world saying, like, believe in telling those stories and believe in speaking about those things, because I think that there is going to be, I think that it's something that the need for it to be discussed is not going to go away, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I think it goes back to something you said earlier about it can feel like you've got a very similar story, because I'm hearing, I suppose I'm tuned to it, but I'm hearing more pandemic stories coming out, and we're seeing more on TV and kind of drop off audio as well, getting a bit more that's appearing. So then you start to think about whether it's, does your story add to that? Does it say something different? As you were talking about earlier on.
But I really, again, with like with historical events, like that was an event that like every single person across the globe was impacted by. Like, there's a lot of room in that. There's a lot of space and a lot of different stories contained in that. And I know that, like, and no one will tell the one that you're telling. No one will have to say about it exactly what you have to say about it. Yeah, it's, I think it, like, be excited, stay excited, keep the faith in it. And yeah, like, because also I think there's like, there can be, especially with theatre and screen stuff, there can be a pressure on like being current and relevant and now, but especially with novels, like that's gonna have a like especially with novels and some screen stuff, hopefully, touch wood, like that's gonna have a lifetime that's long, and you've got a lot of space to write that in. And like, I think about, I mean, oh God, I realize I'm a very typical Scouser, but I think about things like Hillsborough and events like that, where the story needs to be told again and again and again, and it needs to be spoken about again and again and again, because and it doesn't matter if it was decades ago, and it doesn't matter if the story's been told and told and told, because actually, like, every single person who kind of tells these stories brings their own truth to it and illuminates a different perspective on it. And we keep pushing for like justice and accountability. But I will get off I'll stop talking about
it's nice to hear that. It's a good little reminder to.
It is.
Definitely
It
is.
is.
Yeah.
It's still. It's still important. Cheska, do you want to share, or do you want to? You've been keeping quiet, and that is also a valid answer. If you just
No, sorry, it's just I keep having to run off because my dog's had enough of me working today, and he keeps just kicking off and wanting me to throw his toy. So that's why I can hear you, but I just keep popping. He's staring at me right now.
Oh, sorry,
He's not happy about this. But yeah, no, there's lots of what Ben, Lindsay, and Louisa said that was really interesting, especially with, and this is just me, Louisa. But I really agree with what Conway said about COVID and about how it's so important to keep telling that story. But for me, this is just telling you what I'd be interested in, like the effects after. You know, my granddad was 97 during, and blind and Polish during the pandemic, and the effects after of that isolation doesn't go, how it changed you, and that's what we're currently dealing with. If I'm not saying change what your setting is, but that's interesting. And yeah, Lindsay was saying about the imposter syndrome. Yeah, I wrote some stuff of like, what do I want to say? And I just, you know, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm like, oh my God, it's so egotistical, and oh my God, it's all stuff about me. And yes, there's bigger issues within that, and politics and societal things, but I was just like, oh, why would anyone hear about this? And it just reminds me how much that voice is still there. So yeah, I just wrote some stuff down of what I want to talk about, which was interesting for me. And it just also, I'm running a writers group actually. My dramaturg is, which we start in March, and I just can't wait, because I'm like, I need to go to one of these things every week. I'm not a writer that writes every day. I'm not. Like, I don't have the capacity work-wise to do that. But I need to have that like fire in my belly again, and that reminder that we're all here. Like you said about the world and the cosmos, I love that shit, Conway. Like, I'm like, yes, there is no time. But then because of the work I do with my theatre company, I'm always like, well, there's food banks. Me writing a fucking play about whatever, that's not important in the world. People have cancer, people have this. And that's a battle internally that I have, not so much as is my play good or are the characters well written. It's what's the point of this? And I still really, really struggle with what's the point in people going to the theatre and watching this? You know, people are dying. So it's just nice to be like, I'd love to hear some of Ben's manifesto if he has anything that's like general, because I'm like, yeah, why should I be writing this? But yeah, I'm gonna have to just go off because he's now ripping my rug. But I can hear you. I'll be back.
Okay, go rescue your rug. I think I'll say it loudly so you can hear me.
I can hear my back.
I think, oh, is that, have we got him?
This is the naughty boy. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, see, he's happy now because he's got mum.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think, I mean, I find that really relatable, that struggle with like the immorality of art, like,
yes,
like, and but I also think that, and I don't want to project this onto you, maybe this isn't how you experience it, but like, I think that's a very convenient way of kind of attacking yourself for the things that bring you joy and for the things you care about, by being like because first of all, it's completely true. Like, it is true that like there are awful things going on in this life. There are like more direct forms of activism than writing we could be participating in, and also that you are clearly participating in, I noticed from the rest of your life, but like but like that is absolutely something that you could say about any time
Anything, yeah.
anytime that you want to be kind to yourself, anytime you want to, like, if you're like, oh, I really like, I just need to like, I would like to go on holiday and rest and recharge and feel better. Like, I bet there is a voice in your head that's like, God, that's a lot of money. Shouldn't you could be spending that on something.
No, I'm easy. I'll go on holiday, but to write a play, I'm like, oh.
that's and yeah, and I think there probably is something as like, and I wonder if it's connected to that feeling of being like, oh, this is all about me. No one would want to
Yeah.
this, because it's like it's like something trying to force yourself out of the conversation, and trying to really decenter like you and your voice.
It's also, I think it's a, what's that called when you're not doing what you're meant to be doing, when you're distracting yourself? What's that word?
Procrastination.
Oh yeah, it's a great procrastination, being like, oh well, I can't do this, so you know. And it's a good way to stop you writing it, instead of writing it and going, actually, there's some absolute crap here, but there's some gold. And I think I use that as a bit of an excuse to come to, you know, this Zoom and go, God, there is stuff, you know.
And also, you don't, like, again, you don't realize how much other people will see themselves in your stories.
Yeah.
And you don't know until you, like, so again, this is one of the other things that I do in addition to blah 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 blah. Like, so I do, like, sometimes I do kind of drag and I do cabarets, and I did this gig in December where I did this list of kind of honestly, just kind of a horny poem, just kind of a horny poem about like loving women and loving trans bodies and about the type of sex that I have. And I was just like, this is completely self-indulgent, like, because I try and kind of just, I try and hide myself in my kind of professional writing. I try and tell stories about myself without putting myself in them until I open the curtains, as I mentioned earlier. But in drag and in cabaret, I just have fun and I just talk about myself and I talk about my sex life. And like that most self-indulgent poem about my strap on and like kind of subversive forms of like queer sex, like, that I just thought was a bit of fun. Like, I got messages afterwards from someone in the audience who was like, I really loved your piece tonight. Like, I don't think I deserve to kind of, I probably don't count because like I'm a bisexual woman and I and like all the same conversations that we have here about like whether our voices are valid and whether we deserve to take up space. Like, that was her response to seeing herself in this completely self-indulgent, silly piece of art that I'd made. She was like, I don't get to see myself on stage, and I really saw myself in what you did, and it really meant a lot to me. And like, your story will resonate with people, and you talking about yourself will resonate with people, and your uniqueness and your perfectness and that little truth that only you can tell will connect you to other human beings, and it might be their lifeline. Anyway, that's an hour and a half. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was helpful.
No, thank you so much. It was really helpful, and I'd love to come see you in drag. If
Oh,
you
yeah.
get
Me
Box of
too.
Tricks, send out. Is it Manchester you're based?
I'm Manchester based, but I'm in Liverpool a lot as well. I knit between.
Get them to send out some of your events. Welcome.
Oh, well, thank you so much for
Yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been such a pleasure chatting to everyone and connecting to everyone and hearing all your stories. So exciting. All of it, like everything you're working on sounds so exciting. Yeah, just give yourself permission to do it. And thank you for joining us, Sarah Tang. I'm sorry that I know you've been keeping quiet and still, but I really hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, sorry, just had to keep running in and out, so it's quite hard to focus. I just wish I could have more capacity tonight. Yeah.
Don't worry,
Thank you.
The
Yeah,
recording will be on the internet, so you can catch up with it another time if you wish.
thank you so much. Yeah.
And yeah, thank all of you for joining us. I'm gonna stop recording and then I'm gonna kick you all out. But it's really,
Thank you so much. It's been
Yeah,
really
thank
good.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's been brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, I'm really pleased. You will all take care and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye.